Raymond Walker never anticipated that, at 75 years of age, he would be compelled to demonstrate his American citizenship. This scene unfolded outside a Veterans Affairs clinic shortly after he had collected his prescriptions. He had endured 2 tours in Vietnam, witnessed comrades perish in paddy fields, returned to a homeland that seemed reluctant to acknowledge his sacrifices, and subsequently forged a tranquil existence despite it all. Now, an operative from Homeland Security investigations, acting upon what would later be exposed as a deceitful and malicious report, was demanding official documents from a decorated combat veteran in a strip mall parking lot. Surveillance cameras meticulously recorded every second of this encounter, revealing the alarming ease with which federal authority could be wielded against those who had dedicated their very beings to their country. This is the account of how one man's unwavering resolve not to be degraded, fortified by irrefutable proof of his service and nationality, led to a significant judgment of $16.8 million. Before we proceed, from where are you observing? If this is your inaugural visit, kindly consider subscribing. Narratives such as these merit dissemination, and your backing enables us to illuminate more truths. Raymond Walker's existence had been characterized by dedication and resilience. Born in Greenwood, Mississippi, in 1948, he matured during the twilight of the Jim Crow era, the youngest of 6 children raised by a mother who was a domestic worker and a father employed at a cotton gin. He witnessed the civil rights movement's progression from the vantage point of a small southern town where societal shifts occurred gradually and often with considerable violence. His elder brother endured physical assault for attempting to register to vote, and his uncle vanished without a trace following a confrontation with white individuals. Upon reaching 18 years of age in 1966, Raymond faced limited prospects. Pursuing higher education was financially unfeasible, and employment opportunities in Greenwood for young black men were scarce, offering wages barely sufficient for subsistence. The military presented a viable avenue for escape. Despite his mother's apprehension and his father's warnings regarding the military's treatment of black soldiers, Raymond enlisted. He was assigned to the 173rd Airborne Brigade and deployed to Vietnam in early 1967, arriving at the zenith of American involvement. His initial deployment spanned 15 months of harrowing experiences: the Battle of Dak To, operations in the Central Highlands, and relentless patrols through dense jungle terrain where peril lurked from every direction. He encountered sights no 18-year-old should bear witness to, and performed actions that continued to haunt his quiet moments. Yet he also discovered a profound camaraderie, forming bonds with men of diverse backgrounds who relied on each other for survival, where merit superseded racial distinctions. He returned home in 1968, immediately after the Tet Offensive, to a nation in considerable disarray. The anti-war sentiment was pervasive, and returning servicemen were not universally lauded. For Raymond, a black veteran hailing from Mississippi, the situation was even more acute. The struggle for civil rights continued domestically, while he had been engaged in a separate conflict overseas. He felt caught between 2 worlds, belonging fully to neither. Nevertheless, he volunteered for a second tour in 1969, not precisely out of fervent patriotism, but because Vietnam, at that juncture, seemed to offer a clearer purpose than America itself. His second tour proved even more arduous than the first. He was awarded a Purple Heart after sustaining shrapnel wounds during an ambush near Pleiku. After a 2-month recovery period, he rejoined his unit. He also earned a Bronze Star for valor, though he seldom spoke of the deeds that merited such a distinction. He finally came home permanently in 1970 at the age of 22, feeling as though he carried the weight of 50 years. The Department of Veterans Affairs provided medical care for his injuries, though the psychological ramifications were largely unaddressed during that era. He utilized the GI Bill to acquire training as an automotive mechanic, established residence in Phoenix, Arizona, a place devoid of familial connections or painful recollections, and cultivated a quiet life. He remained employed at the same auto repair shop for 3 decades, married a schoolteacher named Dorothy, raised 2 daughters, and became a grandfather to 4 children. Now, at 75, he was retired. His wife had passed away 3 years prior, and his days were structured around medical appointments at the VA, conversations with fellow veterans at the VFW hall, and assisting his daughters with their children. His physical form bore the indelible marks of warfare and aging. The persistent ache in his leg, a consequence of the shrapnel wound, intensified with rainfall. His hearing had diminished due to artillery exposure, and the nightmares never entirely subsided. Tuesday, the 14th of November, 2023, began like any other day. Raymond had a scheduled appointment at the VA clinic in North Phoenix to procure his monthly allotment of prescription medications for blood pressure and the pain relievers he took for his leg. The appointment was set for 9 o'clock in the morning, and true to his ingrained military discipline, he arrived 15 minutes early. He spent 40 minutes in the waiting area, followed by another 20 minutes with the pharmacist discussing his medications, and exited the clinic at 10:15 a.m., carrying a white paper bag containing his prescriptions. The clinic was situated within a strip mall, sharing its premises with a tax preparation service, a discount store, and a small grocer. The parking lot bustled with morning patrons and individuals coming and going from the various establishments. Raymond proceeded slowly towards his truck, a 15-year-old Ford F-150 that he maintained with meticulous care despite its age. It was parked in a location that afforded him an unobstructed path to the sidewalk due to his leg condition. As he was unlocking the driver's door, an individual approached from his left, moving with a rapid, purposeful stride indicative of official business. "Excuse me, sir. I need to speak with you." Raymond turned to face a Caucasian male, appearing to be in his mid-30s, dressed in business casual attire, khakis and a polo shirt with a badge attached to his belt, and what seemed to be a service firearm, visible on his hip. The man displayed an identification wallet, revealing credentials for Homeland Security investigations, a division of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. "I need to see your papers," stated Special Agent Kyle Morrison, his voice imbued with an authoritative tone that anticipated immediate compliance. "Where were you born?" A tightening sensation gripped Raymond's chest, a complex reaction blending confusion, indignation, and something far more profound. The unsettling feeling of having his fundamental right to exist within that space challenged. Nevertheless, he maintained a calm demeanor, the 75 years of ingrained military discipline governing his response. "Son, I was born in Mississippi in 1948. I served 2 tours in Vietnam with the 173rd Airborne Brigade. Now what is this about?" The surveillance camera, mounted on a light pole in the strip mall's parking lot and monitored by the property management company, captured the entire exchange in sharp, high-definition clarity. The camera's perspective offered a clear view of both men's faces, their body language, and every subtle gesture and expression. Morrison advanced, his stance assertive. "Sir, we have received information indicating you may not be legally present in this country. I require documentation to substantiate your citizenship. A birth certificate, passport, or naturalization papers." "Not legally present," Raymond's voice escalated slightly, as decades of accumulated experiences with discrimination and disrespect surged to the surface. "Boy, I was dodging bullets in the Mekong Delta while you were probably still in diapers. I have shrapnel in my leg to prove my age. I have a Purple Heart and a bronze star displayed on my mantle at home. What sort of documentation are you seeking? Should federal agents be permitted to demand proof of citizenship from individuals based solely on unsubstantiated anonymous tips? Share your thoughts in the comments below, as the events that transpired in this parking lot expose the hollowness of service to one's country when prejudice dictates belonging. Morrison's countenance flushed, the camera perfectly documenting his reaction to Raymond's tone. "Sir, I am a federal agent conducting an official investigation. Your military service is irrelevant to me. Your legal status in this country is what concerns me. Present your documentation immediately, or you will be detained for further investigation." "You don't care about my military service?" Raymond's voice, now laced with disbelief, conveyed the strain on his legendary patience, a quality honed over decades of navigating subtler forms of racism. His composure began to fracture. I fought for this country. I bled for this flag. I returned home bearing fragments of metal in my body that still trigger metal detectors. And you stand here demanding I prove I am American. A second vehicle arrived, and another HSI agent emerged. Agent Sarah Chin approached, her body camera activated, adding yet another perspective to the comprehensive surveillance footage. Is there a problem here? The subject is refusing to provide documentation of legal presence, Morrison stated, his hand moving towards his belt where handcuffs were attached. I am preparing to detain him for verification. I have not refused anything, Raymond responded, his voice taut with suppressed anger. I informed him I am an American citizen. I told him I am a Vietnam veteran. I do not carry my birth certificate with me because I have never been required to prove my birth in this country. I have my driver's license, my VA card, my military identification. What more do you people require? Chin moved closer, her camera recording Raymond's face, the evident anger and hurt etched upon his expression. Sir, we merely need to verify your status. If you cooperate, this will be a swift resolution. Cooperate? Raymond withdrew his wallet, his hands trembling slightly, the tremor possibly attributable to anger or a developing age-related condition. The camera was incapable of discerning the precise cause. He produced his Arizona driver's license, his VA identification card indicating his veteran status, and a military retiree identification card he had carried for over 40 years. Here you are. Raymond Walker, born April 15th, 1948, in Greenwood, Mississippi. Social Security number 425689234. Served in the United States Army from 1966 to 1970. Honorably discharged. Is there anything further? Morrison accepted the cards, offering them only a cursory glance before shaking his head. These do not confirm citizenship. Anyone can obtain a driver's license. I require a birth certificate or a passport. My passport is at my residence, Raymond stated through clenched teeth. My birth certificate is secured in a safety deposit box at my bank. I am 75 years old. I reside 20 minutes from this location. I can retrieve them and return. Or you can contact the VA and verify my entire history immediately. That is not how this process operates, Morrison countered. You will accompany us for processing and verification at our facility. The parking lot camera captured the subsequent events with absolute precision. Morrison reached for Raymond's arm, intending to escort him towards their vehicle. Raymond, relying on instincts honed in combat and sharpened by a lifetime of refusing to be diminished, swiftly withdrew his arm. Do not place your hands upon me, Raymond declared, his voice carrying the authority of a man accustomed to commanding respect in foxholes and firefights. I am a citizen of the United States. I am a combat veteran. I have committed no offense. You possess no legal right to detain me. You are resisting a federal officer, Morrison asserted, reaching for his handcuffs. Turn around immediately. Resisting. Raymond's voice escalated into a shout, drawing the attention of individuals across the parking lot. I am exercising my rights as an American citizen. I fought for those rights. I witnessed men perish for those rights. And you are attempting to arrest me in a VA clinic parking lot for being black and walking to my truck. Several bystanders had halted their activities to observe the unfolding scene, their mobile phones already recording. The pharmacy technician from within the VA clinic stepped outside, recognizing Raymond as a regular patron. An elderly Caucasian gentleman, identifiable as a Vietnam veteran by his baseball cap, approached the vicinity. That's Ray Walker, the veteran called out, his voice sharp. He's a decorated combat veteran. What in the devil are you doing to him? Morrison disregarded the growing assembly, his grip on Raymond's arm tightening. Raymond, despite his age and leg condition, still possessed considerable strength derived from decades of manual labor and military discipline. He pulled away once more, stumbling slightly as his affected leg gave way. Chin moved to assist, and together they compelled Raymond to place his hands behind his back. The parking lot camera documented the entire incident. 2 federal agents subduing a 75-year-old combat veteran in a public parking lot, his bag of VA medications falling to the ground, his military identification card scattered across the pavement, The handcuffs clicked shut around Raymond's wrists, and for the first time since the Tet Offensive in 1968, Raymond Walker experienced a profound sense of helplessness. Not fear, for he had faced enemy fire and survived, but a helplessness that inflicted a deeper pain than shrapnel, a wound more grievous than any jungle ambush. "This is wrong," he stated, his voice thick with emotion. "Everything I accomplished, everything I sacrificed, and you treat me as if I do not belong in my own country." They guided him towards their vehicle, the crowd of onlookers swelling and their voices growing increasingly vocal. The Vietnam veteran was on his phone, contacting someone. The pharmacy technician was recording the event on her mobile device. Other individuals shouted questions, inquiring about the situation and demanding to know the reason for the veteran's arrest. Morrison and Chin ignored them entirely, placing Raymond in the rear of their vehicle, separated from the front occupants by a metal partition. Chin's body camera captured Raymond's face through the barrier, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks, his eyes reflecting disbelief and profound betrayal. "I killed people for this country," Raymond murmured, his voice barely audible. "I watched my friends die. I came home with nightmares that never ceased, and this is how you treat me. This is the extent of my service." The drive to the HSI field office lasted 35 minutes. Raymond remained largely silent during the journey, his mind replaying a cascade of memories. The day he enlisted, his drill sergeant's declaration that he was now part of something greater than himself, his inaugural firefight when fear had nearly paralyzed him, the moment he earned his Bronze Star by extricating a wounded soldier from under fire, returning home to his mother, who wept for an entire hour, embracing his daughters at their births, and interring his wife 3 years prior with full military honors. All of it now felt diminished, devalued by his current predicament, seated in the back of a federal vehicle with his hands restrained. At the field office, they processed him akin to any other detainee. Fingerprints were taken from hands that had pulled triggers in Vietnam, had held dying men, and had worked on automobile engines for 30 years. Photographs were taken, a mugshot of a decorated combat veteran. A property inventory was conducted. His wallet, his medications, his keys, his military identification cards placed within a plastic bag. "I wish to contact my daughter," Raymond stated as the processing concluded. "I am entitled to a phone call." "You will receive your call after we verify your status," Morrison replied, inputting information into a computer. "Verify what?" Raymond's patience had been entirely exhausted, supplanted by a chilling fury. "I have provided you with my Social Security number. Run it through your system. Contact the Department of Defense. Contact the VA. I have been part of government databases for 55 years. Every detail about me is documented, verified, and on record." "What precisely are you verifying?" AED. Morrison offered no response, but he did enter Raymond's information into the system. The results were returned within minutes. Raymond Walker, a United States citizen by birth, Social Security number issued in Mississippi in 1948. Military service from 1966 to 1970. Honorable discharge, recipient of the Purple Heart and the Bronze Star. Recipient of VA benefits since 1970. No criminal record. No immigration violations, as he was a natural-born United States citizen. Morrison stared at the screen, his complexion paling. Chin, reading over his shoulder, closed her eyes briefly. They had just detained, handcuffed, and processed a decorated American combat veteran based on an anonymous tip that was demonstrably false. "Mr. Walker," Morrison said, his voice strained, "there appears to have been a miscalculation. You are free to depart." "A miscalculation?" Raymond's voice, though quiet, carried more weight than any shout. "You detained an American citizen. You handcuffed a 75-year-old combat veteran. You humiliated me in front of my community, and you refer to this as a miscalculation." They returned his belongings and removed the handcuffs. Raymond rubbed his wrists, the skin red and irritated, and regarded both agents with an expression that caused them to avert their gaze. "I wish to know what information you received that led you to believe I was not American," Raymond stated. "I wish to know who reported me and what was said. And I require this information in writing." Morrison hesitated, then printed the complaint that had initiated the investigation. Raymond read it, his hands trembling with rage. An anonymous caller had reported a suspicious, foreign-looking individual at the VA clinic, alleging that the person did not sound American and might be using fraudulent documents to access VA benefits. No name, no specific evidence, merely foreign-looking and didn't sound American. Foreign-looking, Raymond repeated, his voice dripping with contempt. I am a black man in America, and someone decided that rendered me foreign, and you acted without question, without verification, without any actual investigation. You simply perceived a black man and assumed the anonymous racist was correct. Neither agent offered a response. They were unable to meet his gaze. Raymond exited the field office at 2:15 p.m., 4 hours after his detention in the parking lot. His daughter was waiting outside, having been alerted by the Vietnam veteran who had witnessed the arrest. She had cancelled her work appointments, collected her father's truck from the VA clinic, and driven to the federal building, her fury mirroring her father's. "Dad, are you all right?" She embraced him in the parking lot, and Raymond completely broke down, sobbing against his daughter's shoulder in a manner he had not since his wife's funeral. "They treated me as though I do not belong here," he managed to say between sobs. "After all I have done, all I have given, they treated me as though I am insignificant." However, Raymond Walker was far from insignificant. He was a decorated combat veteran possessing documentation, witnesses, surveillance footage, and a daughter who happened to be a civil rights attorney. Within a week, she had meticulously assembled a case that would generate significant media attention and instigate policy changes. The lawsuit, Raymond Walker versus the United States Department of Homeland Security, Special Agent Kyle Morrison, and Special Agent Sarah Chin, was formally filed in federal court 3 weeks after the incident. The complaint was devastating, detailing violations of Fourth Amendment rights, false imprisonment, racial profiling, age discrimination, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and deprivation of rights under color of law. The evidence presented was overwhelming. The parking lot surveillance footage depicted the agents confronting a man carrying a VA medication bag, demanding identification, rejecting military credentials, and forcibly detaining him despite his advanced age and protests. Chin's body camera footage, reluctantly provided during the discovery phase, corroborated the surveillance video. Testimonies from the pharmacy technician, the fellow Vietnam veteran, and other bystanders uniformly supported Raymond's account. Most damning was the anonymous complaint itself, which could not withstand even superficial scrutiny. The description, foreign-looking, and didn't sound American, applied to a black man from Mississippi with a southern accent, unequivocally revealed the purely racial motivation behind the report. Furthermore, the agent's failure to conduct any substantive investigation prior to detaining Raymond, despite his military identification, his VA affiliation, and his evident age, demonstrated a pattern of assuming guilt based on race. The case proceeded to trial 18 months later. The federal courthouse was consistently filled daily with representatives from veterans organizations, civil rights groups, and the media, all intently covering every aspect of the proceedings. Raymond testified for 2 full days, guiding the jury through the narrative of his life. Born and raised under the oppressive shadow of Jim Crow laws in Mississippi, he enlisted in the military seeking an escape from poverty, ultimately surviving the brutal realities of Vietnam. Upon his return to a nation that seemed to disregard his profound sacrifices, he painstakingly built a peaceful existence for himself. Then, at the age of 75, he found himself apprehended, accused of an offense as simple as being black in a parking lot. "For 54 years I have carried shrapnel lodged in my leg," he recounted to the jury, his voice cracking with emotion. "Each dawn, as I awaken, I am acutely aware of its presence. When the skies weep, I am reminded of the blood I shed for this land. The specter of Vietnam haunts my sleep, filled with visions of what I witnessed and what I was compelled to do. I mourn friends whose names are etched on that solemn wall in Washington. And after enduring all of that, a single anonymous call, fueled by prejudice, triggers federal agents to demand I prove my American identity. Pray tell, what more could I have possibly done? What else could I have been? How many more times must I demonstrate my right to belong?" His daughter's testimony painted a vivid picture of her father, found weeping outside the federal building, the profound change that detention wrought upon him, and how the very essence of the proud man who had raised her seemed to diminish in his own estimation. Specialists in military records presented evidence of Raymond's distinguished service, detailing his numerous commendations and his honorable discharge. Experts in constitutional law illuminated the violations of the Fourth Amendment, the absence of probable cause, the illegality of his detention, and the relentless replay of surveillance footage in the courtroom. The imagery starkly contrasted a decorated combat veteran being treated as a common criminal in the very country he had valiantly defended. The jury deliberated for 9 arduous hours. Upon their return, their verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. The awarded damages were nothing short of remarkable, totaling $16.8 million. $5.3 million were designated as compensatory damages to address the emotional anguish, wrongful imprisonment, and the infringement of his constitutional liberties. $11.5 million were awarded as punitive damages, meticulously calculated to deliver an unequivocal message regarding the steep price of racial profiling and the profound disrespect shown to a veteran's inherent dignity. Raymond remained still as the verdict was proclaimed, his daughters flanking him, a contingent of fellow veterans filling the courtroom behind him. When the staggering financial sum was announced, there was no outward display of triumph. He simply offered a nod, a soldier acknowledging the successful completion of a critical mission. Both agents involved faced termination, while their supervisor, who had neglected to critically examine the patently flawed anonymous complaint, was demoted. Homeland Security investigations subsequently implemented sweeping policy reforms, mandating the thorough verification of anonymous complaints prior to any enforcement actions, requiring the acceptance of military identification as valid proof of identity, instituting mandatory training on implicit bias and veterans' rights, and prohibiting the detention of individuals at Veterans Affairs facilities without exceptional justification. Raymond generously allocated a substantial portion of his settlement to organizations dedicated to supporting veterans and advocating for civil rights. He became a prominent voice at military gatherings and civil rights conferences, sharing his narrative not with an undercurrent of bitterness, but with a resolute determination that such an ordeal would not befall others. The surveillance footage from the parking lot became an essential component of federal law enforcement training, serving as a stark and potent illustration of how racial profiling operates and the devastating human toll exacted by the presumption that an individual does not belong based solely on their outward appearance. And in Phoenix, Arizona, Raymond Walker resumed his tranquil existence, albeit with something intangible restored that had been stripped from him in that fateful parking lot. The unwavering certainty that his service held profound significance, that his citizenship was beyond reproach, and that even at 75 years of age, a combat veteran possessed the capacity to wage and triumph in one final battle. If you believe that military service should be imbued with meaning, that veterans deserve profound respect rather than unwarranted detention, and that one's citizenship should never be contingent upon their appearance or the sound of their voice, please click the subscribe button and enable notifications. For stories like Raymond's serve as a powerful reminder that the struggle for dignity and justice is not a singular victory. It demands perpetual vigilance and the unwavering courage to confront and challenge the overreach of authority.